Welcome in, folks, here on the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Ryan Roberts. I'm pointing the wrong direction because this reflects it. And also Alex Gilstrap. I pointed at Alex. Thank you, StreamYard, for making things simple. Talk about a hell of an open. Here we talk about the NFL Draft, part of RiseandDraft.com, a comprehensive NFL Draft website with a fantastic database led by no one other than Jesse Fritsch. Jesse's great at what he does. But today we're going to be talking about Derek Stingley's injury that we recently found out about today. And then we're also going to be discussing some current letdowns for the 2022 NFL Draft class. We've got some interesting names on there, so stay tuned for that coming up very, very soon. Guys, how are we doing today? We're recording on a Wednesday, which feels super weird, but it ended up working because of the Derek Stingley stuff. But how's everybody doing today?
Fantastic, Joe. I've never had a bad day. How are you?
I don't know if that's true, but I'm doing great. I'm talking to you guys, so I'm doing fantastic.
That was sweet.
That was
Ryan,
sweet.
did you feel the love?
Radiating through the
microphone.
It's crazy.
I can't wait. You just tell the man you're going to visit New York City potentially, and he gets all lovey-dovey on me.
I'm more lovey on the podcast than I am in the Twitter chat.
he was just thinking about coming back to the Northeast because he hates his life out in LA right now.
If you listen to the FCS pod, which I know Alex doesn't, but you do, Ryan.
No.
I talk about it every week about how much I hate living in Los Angeles, and it was one of the biggest mistakes that I've ever made. But
I've never wanted to go to I'll go to San Diego. San Diego sounds like a good time.
San Diego's very nice, and I might move down there.
Yeah, Los Angeles, nah, I'm good, man. I don't need to visit that spot.
There are no redeeming qualities to Los Angeles, and I'm sorry if any listeners are from LA, but it's overpriced. It's covered in smog. It's smelly. It's dirty. There's literally the only positive is that all the entertainment's out here, and you can do everything remotely now. So it's completely pointless.
Have you guys ever? I'm sorry, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent.
That's
okay.
I know you can get to an ad read and actually start talking about football for a second. But have you guys ever seen South Park? Do you like South Park?
Yeah, I used to watch that religiously.
Do you remember when there was like that thing? They were everyone I think moved to San Francisco or something like that, and all this the smug came over. It wasn't smog, it was smug, but it was fantastic.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Everyone here is incredibly rude. Like people from Philly, New Jersey, and New York, they're assholes, but at least they're genuine. Like it's very different. It's hard to explain, but I have had nothing but bad interactions with people out here.
Authentic assholes.
Yes, I'd rather you be an authentic asshole. So before we get to today's discussion, I just want to tell you folks about Bet Online. We're back and better than ever with the season almost halfway through. We've got a lot of college football action and NFL action that has been rolling. All eyes are on the gridiron right now. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all of your pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface with more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to their website use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, guys. So the thing that we were hit with this morning is news surrounding an NFL draft prospect that is considered to be a first-round talent, is in the conversation of top 2 at the cornerback spot. Was a stellar freshman performer, but is not going to be finishing his season, though, here in 2021. We're referring to Derek Stingley, the cornerback from LSU. He recently had a medical procedure done on his left foot, a foot that he injured over the summer, and he's been out over the last 2 weeks. Oh, my God, where did that cat come from?
Jumped on my lap.
We're getting cat appearances on the – I'm sorry for anyone who's listening on audio, but there was just a cat if you want to go see it on the video version. I was swiping between documents only to swipe over and see the cat. But guys, Derek Stingley, obviously when you have a first-round talent, we have to talk about the fact that he's done for the season. He's not going to be able to play for the remainder of the year. I have not seen an indication that if he's going to just straight up declare or not. I'm sure that's something that it's probably going to happen, and he's probably waiting on the right time to do it and is already in communications with his agent at this point. But I want to dive into what this means for us and his draft stock. Ryan, let's head to you first. Do you think this is going to have a major impact on anything for Derek Stingley, or has the tape been at least quality enough that he'll stay around where he is, where he's been projected?
Derek Stingley is going to go top 10, no matter if he would have played this year, whether he's injured, whatever. It doesn't matter. When you are a guy that is 6 foot plus, 4.3 speed, and has ball skills and ball production that he has had throughout his career, he's going to go early. There's no doubt. I don't think that anybody would even question that at this point. I think the question, though, is I've seen people put him in, hey, this guy, if he's not the number 1 player in the class, he's number 2 player in the class. And I think we need to pump our brakes and take a step back for a second. I thought for a minute that since he's been a guy since 2019 when he had maybe the best freshman season a cornerback has ever had, at least in recent memory, that maybe I was just getting to the point where I had just seen too much Derek Stingley. He'd been on the mind. He had been just in front of us too often, and we get kind of like jet lagged on him. We're just like, all right, man, like I get it. He's a really good player. But let's be honest, 2020, dealing with an injury, I get it, nagging injury that year, was not great. Like, it was good. It was solid. It was a very solid year after a phenomenal year. Then this year, early on, he's not great either. Like, let's call it what it is. Like, he's been up and down for the last 2 seasons. So I don't think that Derek Stingley is the head and shoulders best cornerback in this class. I think it's going to be a heavy debate. I think that it is definitely not something that is set in stone. As for your question, though, Joe, is it going to affect his draft slot? I don't think so, because I think we might have a really talented cornerback class. I think there's 2 to 3 guys that could be in the top 10 range. So I don't think that it's going to affect Derek Stingley in that regard, because I think that he's going to go top 10. His athletic profile is going to give him the opportunity. And a foot injury, let's hope that he gets the timetable that he's able to test before the draft, because I know that he is going to test phenomenally, and he's going to knock that part of the conversation and the evaluation out of the park. So it's not going to stop him from being a top 10 pick. It's nearly a setback. And this, I mean, is he going to declare? He's going to declare. He's going to be a top 10 pick, slam dunk. But I don't think that the injury is going to curtail his draft stock too much.
Yeah, I really think that this Derek Stingley evaluation is getting muddier and muddier over time, because what we saw in 2019 is someone that this is the obvious number 1, defensive player in his class. We were talking about this in 2019, and it was because as a true freshman playing at LSU on the national stage when they won the national championship, he was their best corner when they had Christian Fulton, who some thought was a first round corner, as a 18-year-old. So 2020, like you said, Ryan, it's the COVID season. There's, the full off season is not to the degree that it typically is. On top of that, you stack, a nagging injury that he dealt with the whole season. This year, dealing with his foot issue. We haven't seen this guy and Derek Stingley play fully healthy since his true freshman season, which feels like a decade ago. I feel like we've been talking about Derek Stingley for ages, and that's just because he came onto the scene so young, which you just don't typically see at the cornerback position, especially at a program such as LSU. So, as a true freshman. So I think he's going to be a top 10 pick regardless. Like you said, the movement skills at his size with the ball production he's had is going to warrant a top 10 selection. But there is uncertainty with him. I mean, like I said, he's dealt with some injury. I don't think there's a surefire guy like he was, talked about to be. And I feel like we deal with this all the time. Trevor Lawrence was the perfect quarterback prospect a couple years before he declared, his first eligible year. It's just what we do with these guys. We see them pop off early in their collegiate career, and we think that they're perfect. And then as, their college years wear on, we start to pick more holes. Or in Derek Stingley's case, he starts to deal with these nagging injuries, and there's, not as consistent play at certain times throughout his career. So I just don't think this is quite the, blue chip, top 5 obvious CB1 prospect that we thought he was going to be a couple years ago. And it doesn't help his case that I think this is a pretty strong cornerback class at the top, especially with the top 3.
It's a similar conversation, and I've actually been a victim of this, so I am guilty of this to a degree, because I kind of have been holding on to the 2019 version of Keaton Slovis, the quarterback for USC now, and he has suffered similar fate. He's been hurt, and it's been kind of up and down his performance since then. And I kind of had to have a realization with myself recently where I'm just like, I need to take a step back from Keaton for a second. I still am a fan of him. I still think that he can get back to that player, but you're evaluating a player that you're holding on to tape that is 2 years old. Like, NFL scouts are going to go into this process and they're going to watch Derek Stingley, the couple games he played, and maybe a couple of the games from 2020. And that's all they're going to watch. 2019 doesn't matter anymore. I made the metaphor on Twitter today. You're going to a used car lot. Why are you you're not going to ask a guy at a used car lot, how did it run in 2019? Who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. We need to be real with ourselves, man. The player that is on tape this year and last year might be what Derek Stingley is now. And that might be predicated a little bit to the injuries that he suffered. It might have something to do with it. But either way, what have you done for me lately? I think we all just need to take a step back and evaluate the player for what he is. 2019 doesn't matter anymore. What Derek Stingley is right now is the player that we're getting moving forward.
So that's a pretty comprehensive look into what to expect from Derek Stingley. And I like that we took the multiple angles there, because I don't think it might not necessarily just be a clear-cut answer, but it's a really good point, Ryan, that we can't just be hung up on that 2019 tape if he hasn't necessarily done that consistently, because there's been 2 years in between and now an injury-plagued season as well. So Stingley is going to be a fun talking point, and I'm sure it's going to be one that is very volatile in terms of his draft stock, that is going to be a swinging pendulum from one end to the other, just because there's going to be the consistent overreaction that we get with injured top-quality prospects. So I want to get into our remaining discussion here, which, as I led into in the beginning of the show, we're going to talk about biggest letdowns of the 2022 NFL draft class. We've had 5 weeks already, 6 if you include the teams that played in week 0, to see some of these draft prospects play in big matchups, to step onto the field and showcase their abilities to a point where we can understand and expect what these guys are doing, and also still give them enough time to maybe recover a little bit and to work around some of these struggles that they have. So leading into the first guy that's been a major letdown that I feel goes in line with his entire team, except maybe a couple guys, is Jalen Weidemeyer from Texas A&M. Texas A&M has not been good this year, and we haven't really seen much from Weidemeyer. So why did you pick him, Ryan, as your first player?
Well, I mean, I wanted to stop talking about Emory Jones, draft Twitter's QB1. Well, honestly, though, my first thought was for a second, and if you would have asked me this a couple weeks ago, I probably would have said Jaleel Billingsley from Alabama, a different tight end. But of course, he's finally out of he's out of the doghouse now. He's starting to produce. He is on what looks like Nick Saban's good side now. So thankfully, he is back to that tight end one conversation. Jalen Weidemeyer is a guy that has been super productive. If you haven't followed the story, Baylor Cupp was actually the top tight end recruit coming out of high school football. He went to Texas A&M. Also, he's still there. And Weidemeyer was in the same class as Baylor Cupp, and he was the much I shouldn't say less recruited because he was still a 4-star player, but he was a lesser known, lesser recruited tight end prospect in the same class going to the same school. Cupp has been dealing with injuries over the last couple of years. Weidemeyer takes the reins and has not let go since. For 2 years before this season, he was an All-American candidate, All-SEC candidate. People were really excited because he's 6'5", 260 pounds, big hands, strong in the air. A lot of good things to like about Jalen Weidemeyer. I wasn't the biggest fan of Weidemeyer in the summer because, one, I thought blocking-wise, I thought it was very lackluster and not great for a guy his size. Then I didn't think that he was the most dynamic athlete of all time. So I think that he was a guy that was just going to win in the air purely. I didn't see great chops as a route runner. Didn't see an explosive linear athlete. So I was a little lower on him. But he has been a guy from media up into the NFL ranks, has been talked about a guy first 2 rounds. Like, that is the potential for Jalen Weidemeyer. And he starts the year off decently. He has I think he has 4 receptions in each of the first 3 games. So I'm like, okay, guy's production. That's good. He's always productive. Can't wait to see the tape. Then over the last 2 weeks, when Texas A&M has really hit their struggles, they look bad right now. And especially that Arkansas game, it was really ugly. But they hit a struggle, and he has 3 receptions in 2 games for 33 yards. And as the guy that is the unquestioned top pass catcher, you expect a whole lot more. And I think now that if Jaylen Weidemeyer is not producing at a high level, which he is not right now, then I think that the other parts of his game, the lackluster blocking and the inability as an athlete to out-athlete second and third level defenders is going to be highlighted more. Because at the end of the day, it's all about production. If a guy produces and maybe, his traits aren't fantastic, but maybe he's just a really good football player. If Jaylen Weidemeyer is not producing, then the negatives in his game, the hiccups in his game, I think are going to be evaluated even closer, as they should be. And I think that he has been off, especially over the last few weeks, to a very slow start. And I think that it's really clouding how good this tight end class is, because I think that Jalil Billingsley is still in the top for me. I think that guys like Cade Otton, Trey McBride from Colorado State, I said in the preseason, I think that he can overtake Jalen Weidemeyer because they're similar football players. And I think Trey McBride's just a better version. There are tight ends right now that I think are going to pass over Jalen Weidemeyer if he does not start to pick it up. And I think that he's going to be a faller in this tight end class.
So before, Alex, you chime in, they've had some problems at quarterback, specifically injuries, Haynes King, Zach Calzada, a lot of inconsistency just at who's back there throwing passes.
Sure.
Do you account that at all into the situation of him not producing whatsoever? Or do you think it goes a little deeper than that?
I think it goes a little deeper just because, I mean, obviously there is some context to that conversation. If it was a wide receiver, specifically an outside receiver, I would take that into a much higher count. But for me, a big body tight end, that's a security blanket. And for me, he's getting opportunities. He's getting targets. He's just not being a consistent football player right now. So I think that there is context, and I think that it's a great note to kind of just throw out there, Joe, because the quarterback position has not been good for Texas A&M. But I think it runs a little more deep than just their maybe being a little below, but with their being below average quarterback play right now.
Yeah, I mean, here's my point on Jalen Waterbury. I was low on him coming into the year, and like you said, Ryan, for someone that had the expectations that he did, it's just been disappointing, and that is especially true since they hit the SEC schedule the past 2 weeks against Arkansas and then Mississippi State this past week. We've seen his targets cut in half, which targets, that's not a stat that you want to follow and put much weight into, but 3 drops on the year versus his 15 catches. That means 20% of the passes in his vicinity have been drops. And do the math. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I like it.
Yeah. So 20% drop rate on, when you compare it, when you add in the receptions that he has had on the year. So only 15 receptions to 3 drops. That's not what you want out of the tight end position, especially when he's just not the dynamic athlete that a lot of these other tight ends are. Jalil Billingsley, Cade Otton is a plus athlete at the position. So some of these other tight ends in a decent tight end class just have more athleticism, more upside. And I just see, to Joe's point, what you said, Joe, talking about the quarterback position and how it impacts doesn't matter for drops. Drops are on Jalen Weidemeyer. Quarterback position has nothing to do about that. And then the bigger thing for me is the run blocking for Jalen Weidemeyer. So it has nothing to do about the quarterback change. This guy has only been in play for 15 rushing snaps on the year. That's through 5 games.
Wow.
Fun stat.
That's a good stat.
Good stat. 15.
Wow.
That tells you what the confidence level this coaching staff has in him as a run blocker, that they're willing to take him off the field aside from 15 snaps, including 0 against Mississippi State and only 1 against Arkansas. So
put that on Twitter. Put that on Twitter.
Did you find that on Twitter?
No. This is the stat I found myself.
Okay.
So since Arkansas in week 4, the 2 SEC games, he has been in for 1 rushing snap. This is just not a run blocker. And when you don't have dynamic athleticism like some of these other guys do, this is just something you can't hang your hat on and be confident in as well as his translation to the NFL.
So the next guy that you want to bring up here, Alex, And do we have visitors? What's going on back there? We have a live viewing audience when we're losing Alex Gilstrap. So we were just going to go to Alex's next player. But this is another guy who is similar to Jalen Weidemeyer, is playing on a team that is underperforming, not the level of Texas A&M, but this Oklahoma team has been struggling thus far. And there's been some cause for concern with Spencer Rattler, but we refuse to talk quarterbacks on this show. But you picked Eric Gray, Alex, as your first underwhelming player. And if we're just clicking into his stats, the guy's only rushed for 245 yards on 49 rushing attempts. That's good for 3.8 yards per carry, no touchdowns. This is a team that you would expect to be able to have some explosive plays, put a player like that in space, and ironically left a Tennessee offense that seems to be doing maybe a little bit better running the football. So why did you pick Eric Gray as your underwhelming player?
Yeah, so for me, Eric Gray, obviously you touched on it. Tennessee running back transferred to Oklahoma. And look, I was coming into the year, so he was my RB2. This is a dynamic athlete. This is what you wanted to position as far as receiving ability, rushing ability, burst to the second level. It's just been underwhelming. Like you said, a lot with this Oklahoma offense, Eric Gray's inability to get loose and really take that next step in this offense that I feel like is more spread out than what he was able to get at Tennessee, where I thought he was going to really propel himself was, when in the spread out offense, Tennessee's very closed off. There's not a lot of weapons aside from what Eric Gray was able to provide at Tennessee, but he goes to Oklahoma where there's receiving talent. There's a, feasible passing game available to him, especially, with Spencer Rattler and the projection we had for him moving forward. I really thought that this was the time that Eric Gray was going to take that next step, because I just love his ability in open space. And really, I just see someone that just hasn't been able to take advantage of his opportunity here in this, moving on to Oklahoma. So Eric Gray's just someone that's disappointed me just because of the expectations I had set forth for him. It's just someone that I think will get the ball rolling. There's obviously Kennedy Brooks there that's taken away from him, but it's just been a little bit of an inefficient running game for this Oklahoma offense. And I felt like Eric Gray had a lot more upside coming into the year.
Man, as soon as I heard Ben Solak was a big Eric Gray fan, I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to hear it anymore. Just kidding. Shout out to Ben Solak. Eric Gray, I was high on him too, Alex. I think I had him my fourth ranked guy in this summer, something like that, 4 or 5. So I was also an Eric Gray guy. So I'm a little disappointed that he hasn't gotten off to a great start. I think there's a lot of context to it, though. I really do think there is. I think there's inefficiency all over the place. We talked about Spencer Rattler and just the ineffectiveness that he has had at the quarterback position. And when you're not throwing the football well, teams are going to crowd the run game. Like, it's just going to happen. I think the offensive line has not been great. They moved Tyrese Robinson out to right tackle as a 6'3", 330-pound offensive lineman, which is like an odd fit. I feel like the running game is not getting any favors from the offensive line play. I feel like the offensive line hasn't been great. I feel like the passing game has been very inconsistent. So I think that it's just he's a part of a machine right now that is not working very well. I mean, honestly, I don't think that it's a deficiency of talent in the area of Eric Gray. I just think that when we're really looking at it, the whole offense just has struggled. He's been a cog in the machine. So we need to see, is this a guy that ends up going back for another year? Because I think we need to also remember he's only a true junior and he's only a first-year player at Oklahoma. Maybe he comes back in 2022. Then he's one of the next wave in a really great running back class, it looks like, in 2022. I just feel like the transition period for Eric Gray just hasn't been smooth for a lot of different factors.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. I mean, it's just, when you come into the season with such high expectations, I know you were higher on him than the consensus, but this was one of my guys I was hanging my hat on. So it really hurts me that he, in an Oklahoma offense where we've seen running backs play better than expectations, he just hasn't been able to quite do that to this point.
For sure.
So these first two guys were players that I think by a lot of people were in contention for top 5 at their specific position groups. And the next one that you picked, Ryan, was a little bit more of a sleeper, but a very highly talked about sleeper. And that specifically is Zion Nelson, the Miami offensive tackle. And the one thing that everyone I kept hearing them mention is, the guy was really underweight when he came in, and then he's bulked up and he looks really good now. And again, similar to these other teams, Miami has just not been good this year. They've been dealing with injuries, but they have just been straight up bad. And a clear indication of that is not being able to beat Virginia, which you would expect a Miami team to be able to do so. Why did you pick Zion Nelson, though, separate from the points that I just led into there?
Yeah, I mean, in the summer scouting of offensive tackles, we kind of coupled Zion Nelson and Charles Cross from Mississippi State together a little bit because those are the developmental guys. Which one's going to take the next step? Which is going to be the big rise from the group? I don't think Charles Cross has been that guy either to this point, but Zion Nelson really disappoints me because he is a guy that's 6'5", 315 pounds. Like you said, came in, he was a 240-pound senior. He was 260 pounds when he got on the campus, was forced into action because there just wasn't another guy at left tackle. And he had his struggles. 2020, I felt like there was a lot of good tape. I felt like it was, it was scattered. It was still up and down a little bit, but he didn't let up a sack during 2020. You're like, okay, this type of athleticism, filling into this weight, now has this massive frame, 35-inch arms. You're like, I can do something with that, right? And I gave him a 3rd-round grade in the summer, which is like tentative. It's not like a big grade or anything, but I'm like, but this guy could be that mid to late 1st rounder, 2nd rounder. Like this could be the riser. And I've just been watching live over the last few weeks in Miami because I feel like they're always on TV because they're still a big brand, Mm-hmm. And I'm going to hold my judgment until I get the All 22, I get the coach's film. But man, he looks like the same guy to me. He looks like the same guy. So for me, he is a late day 2, early day 3 type of offensive tackle right now with developmental upside, but he just hasn't gotten there. Like he hasn't taken a step. He took a massive step from 2019 to 2020. 2020, 2021, just kind of looks like the same guy. So it's not so much that he is regressed. It's just that I haven't seen any development out of him. He's still the same pure projection that he was entering the season this year.
Yeah, going back to the Alabama game, because I feel like that's a big circle for his evaluation. I didn't hate what I saw. There was definitely some big negative plays.
Yeah.
But it was fine, especially when all things considered, he's really the one focal point that Alabama had to focus on, out of, threats on the Miami offensive line. But it's just gotten worse over time, I feel like. As the season's dragged on, and we're only through week 5, and I just feel like we've kind of seen a constant downslide. Of course, Michigan State was his worst game of the year, in my opinion, week 3. Just looking at, watching it live, you saw Jacob, I don't know how to say Michigan State.
Panisak or something?
Yeah, it's something, their captain guy that's big on their defensive line.
Their captain guy.
Yeah, I can't say his name.
He also spells Jacob wrong. I mean,
he does. It's all wrong. There's no way of pronunciating it right. It's just one of those. He kind of ate his lunch money throughout the game, and that's someone that I just don't think is really all that good. So that was really concerning for his evaluation. I think he had 4 quarterback pressures and 2 sacks he gave up in that game, which is not good. # not good. So Virginia this past week, another 2 quarterback pressure, gave up another sack. He's already matched sacks given up. He's passed his quarterback hurries that he had on the season in 2020. So I just feel like this developmental guy who we came into the season kind of, we felt good about that projection and that, of that development. He's kind of taken a step back, I feel like, in my mind, as a pass blocker. So from a production standpoint and the pressures and sacks he's given up to this point. So hasn't been good for him. Not the steps you wanted to see, not the strides you wanted to see from Zion Nelson in 2021.
I feel like he's just a guy that he's a positional blocker. So what that means is basically he's going to get his body in the right spot, the right position, but he's not a finisher. I feel like there's no mean streak to him, and I really want to see something, man. Like I feel like every block is the same. Gets in the right spot. Sometimes he gets overpowered because he's still developing to his body, but like I just don't see anything about him that says like that's a dog. That he's got nastiness to him. And then offensive tackle position, offensive line position. Like you need that a little bit. And I just feel like there's a tentativeness and a passiveness to a guy like Zion Nelson right now for whatever reason.
Well, I'm sure he can learn a thing or two from former Miami Hurricane Eric Flowers, and maybe he can make up for that aggressiveness by learning how to trip people. That tends to work for some guys.
Sure.
The last guy that we have here to talk about on the show is from Alex. You picked Brandon Joseph, the defensive back from Northwestern, and last cycle we had Greg Newsome turn into this out of nowhere riser. I felt like he wasn't really in the discussion until that final month where everyone's like, man, this guy's good. And then he ends up going in the first round. And coming into this cycle, I was perplexed a little bit to see you guys talking about another Northwestern guy. I'm like, how many times does this happen where we have back-to-back years with a possible first round, early second round prospect coming from Northwestern? And Brandon Joseph seemingly has not lived up to the hype that we've already projected upon him in a safety class that is very, very strong. And some of these other safeties might be passing him by. So why did you pick Brandon Joseph as our final disappointing prospect?
Yeah, so the hype for Brandon Joseph really stemmed from his elite ball production in 2020, coming on as a redshirt freshman, led the country in the condensed season with 6 interceptions. So very impressive, especially for a redshirt freshman with limited playing experience to have that level of ball production in the Big Ten. So 2021 has been a different story for him. 7 missed tackles to this point through 5 games.
Oh, no.
Not good. He has been targeted 17 times, giving up 16 receptions.
Wow.
So, for someone who was, the hype was predicated on his ability in coverage, giving 16 out of 17, 94% reception percentage there, completion percentage there is not promising. The one pass intended his way that was not completed was actually completed to him. His one interception on the year has not, defended a pass. It's been either the guy catches it or, the one interception he has against Ohio. So, obviously some context there. So
how dare you?
Yeah. So,
no make fun of the Bobcats. No,
right.
no making fun of the Bobcats on this.
Also,
podcast.
who would have thought that Alex is the analytics guy coming over here with the?
I'm
he just got PFF pulled up on this.
Oh, I do. I got PFF advanced stats. Yeah.
Who's the counter you're using?
But I planned for this. This is how I came across it.
No, you're doing a better job than Ryan. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So the 7 tackles missed isn't as surprising to me as the 94% completion percentage he's given up, just because coming into the year, it was based on his coverage. He's not a physical, guy on the back end. He's sub 200 pounds. He's not known for that physicality on the back end. What he's known for is his ability to cover space and get his hand on the football one way or another, whether that's turning the ball over or deflecting the pass away from the receiver. So to see, Nebraska, go 2 for 2 passing, 1 for 2 passing. Duke is lighting them up. Michigan State's lighting them up. Indiana State was 4 for 4 passing against them. So this is just not quite the coverage defender that we saw in 2020. And so there is some hesitancy there. I think in a safety class such as this one that we look like we're going to have, especially, this is not the kind of start to the season Brandon Joseph needs to have, because there's safeties such as, Brisker from Penn State. I couldn't think of his first name off the top of my head. Jaquan Brisker. You have Daxton Hill, who's been very impressive over the last couple weeks, especially as a leader of that Michigan Wolverine defense. Of course, Kyle Hamilton, Lewisine, the list goes on and on of the safety class. So really excited about the safety class, and for Brandon Joseph, who I came into the year as my safety 2 based on that ball production, because turning the football over, especially, as a defensive back, I mean, that's what you want, the ability to make big plays. We talked about this with Andre Cisco last year, and while we were both, especially you, Ryan, were so high on him, was his ability to make the big play, the splash play, to get the offense back on the field. So really excited about Brandon Joseph coming into the year. Not the best start to this point. So looking for him to rebound as we get into more Big Ten action.
Not only did you insult the University of Ohio, you also decided to insult FCS power Indiana State's Sycamores. I can't believe.
Indiana State sucks.
Well, yes, they do. Brandon Joseph, man, I have not seen the film, so I don't have a ton of context. Right. I will go by what Alex is saying as far as the numbers. The numbers are ugly. I had a late first on him in the preseason. I am a huge fan of Brandon Joseph for what he put on film in 2020. I would like to see how much of his struggles is him trying to make up for the fact that everybody else around him is not great right now, because they lost Blake Gallagher and Patty Fisher and Ernest Brown, and there's Greg Newsome. There's a lot of guys that left from that 2020 unit that was fantastic. So I would like to see a little of the context just as far as like why the struggles are happening. But I'm still going to hold out hope for Greg. Obviously, those numbers kind of speak for themselves right now. He's not off to a great beginning of the year. And I think it's a great point, Alex. Maybe the best point is the fact of like, hey, he's also a part of what could historically be one of the best safety classes we've seen in a little bit of time. So,
all right, well, that is our 4 players that we feel have been the most disappointing so far. On a lighter note, next week we will do the biggest surprises for guys that have just randomly popped up out of nowhere and have looked really good so far this season. That'll take a little bit of extra tape watching and going back and re-observing who those prospects might be. So stay tuned for that. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, as well as wherever you're listening for your podcast feed, and also leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.